Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blooms and Beyond podcast, a podcast that uncovers plant history, culture, and management through the lens of science. I'm your host, Ping. How's everyone doing today? I'm doing great because I have one of the icons of the greenhouse pest management entomologist and researcher, Dr. Lance Osborne. Lance has been working on pest management research for years, and I had the privilege of knowing him when I was doing my postdoc work at University of Florida, MREC. In today's episode, we're going to pick his brain on spider mites and better management practices for greenhouse crop production. So I don't want to steal any more thunder from our speaker today. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Lance Osborne. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Lance, welcome to the podcast. But first, let's start off with the introduction. Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name's Lance Osborne. I'm at the Mid-Florida Research and Education Center, which is near Orlando, Florida. I've been here for almost 45 years, 46, something right. Who's counting anymore? But I came from California, graduated from UC Davis. I did quite a bit of work in their greenhouses in the ornamental department, working on biological control of insect pests and mites. I did my PhD on the greenhouse whitefly and biological control using Encarsia formosa. I did a postdoc on mosquitoes, which I was glad to get a job back in greenhouses because it's no fun going out every morning collecting 10,000 mosquitoes off of my leg. So then I've been here ever since.
Wow.
I enjoy working and get up every day to come to work. Some days it's more playing than working. So good job.
I remember seeing you every morning when I was at MREC back 3 years ago. And I was like, I go to work every day. And I was like, Lance is here every day. But do you see yourself growing up as a nature kid? Or are you interested in the beginning with pest when you were a child? Or is this something that stumped us through your education to this trajectory?
I was kind of a wild kid. My parents let me run out the door in the morning in Florida, where I grew up in Cape Canaveral. And so I'd run around for the whole day doing whatever. I really got interested in insects just as a kid. I had friends that took entomology as a summer course in high school, and I basically collected all their collections for them. And then I went to UC Davis, and I was in pre-vet, but I couldn't stand the blood and gore. And so I started working on other things, and they were all going extinct. So I started working on insects because I knew I wouldn't have to worry about losing them.
That's a good shift of all those extinct things that you ended up with insects. So basically, you grew up in Florida and you went to school in California and then come back to Florida for your job. What is the big difference? Like you having lived in both states, what would be the biggest difference?
Florida's a zoo. You go outside and there's stuff crawling around everywhere. There's probably more going on than any one person can handle. It's fun, but sometimes you lose, if you're like me, the OCD. I keep going from and short attention span. I go from one thing to another. That's why I love my job. There's always something to work on. There's always something new.
Yeah, you're right. And especially in ornamental world, we're dealing with thousands of different plants. With the pest, I know there's countless work that can be done. So I guess it's a job safety too, or job security. All those pests that you have worked with, if you had to pick one, which one would be your favorite?
Oh, I don't know if I can say I have a favorite. I like working with spider mites and mites in general, but I kind of lean toward whiteflies as being the one that I like the most. But spider mites basically was what I was hired to do. Even though I did my PhD on whiteflies, I was told that I'd never work on whiteflies ever again when I came to Florida. And
Why is
5
that?
years later, they said they just didn't see them. And basically 5 years later, I've been working on whiteflies, a bunch of different whiteflies ever since. I didn't bring them. I didn't bring them to Florida, I swear.
Well, people would blame you, say, hey, before you came here, we don't have whitefly issues. Now, all of a sudden, we have all those whiteflies coming to Florida.
Maybe it's just because somebody was here looking for them.
You're right. You're right. I know Florida, because I lived in Florida for about a year, and Florida has its unique environment, which is good for a lot of plants, but also a heaven for the pest. I would say that. What is the top pest challenge in greenhousing Florida specifically?
The challenge is that if a grower is going to try to save money and be able to grow a healthy crop, he's got to pay attention to spider mites. So as the foundation of an IPM program had to be something that could manage spider mites. And that was the truth nationwide. There was a study done out of Georgia with Will Hudson that basically said spider mites were the most sprayed pest in ornamentals nationwide. More chemicals went out for it. So that was the logical place to start in trying to develop an IPM program. And then as you start picking off one pest at a time, you start getting all these other ones that come in when you reduce the pesticide pressure. And so then we went from one to another, and it's been an ongoing saga ever since. But we have very good management programs for spider mites.
Yeah, I know spider mites and pests and plants are similar to human being. We would adjust to a certain environment. If the environment is their favorite place, then they would just survive in there. And do you think that Florida is providing the favorite environment condition for spider mites to survive in that regard? I mean, like you said, spider mites is everywhere in greenhouse, but specifically in Florida, do you think that Florida provided a better environment for them to be a bigger problem?
I think they are allowed to, because we have a year-round, a nice accommodating temperatures and environments, so that you don't get a break in the life cycle like you do as you move north and get colder and actually have freezes. We don't have mites go into diapause here. And so we don't see the red version that everybody keeps talking about. I haven't seen one in Florida. But again, they prefer it hot and dry, which is kind of, we're not hot, dry. We're plenty hot, but not dry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but nationwide, mites are a major issue in greenhouses.
Because you kind of briefly mentioned the life cycle in Florida, they don't take a break. But can you elaborate us a little bit more specifically for spider mites? What are their life cycle is?
Okay, well, basically you have the egg, you have a larval stage, you had a deutonymph, and a teleonymph. I haven't memorized its life cycle mainly working on whiteflies, so I forgot some of this stuff. But the bottom line is you go through a number of different immature stages, and they molt to become an adult. Depending on temperature, the temperature drives how quickly the mites progress through all these stages. And so we can have a life cycle that you can have a generation in about 2 weeks. Okay, so they can really develop quickly. And as it gets colder, it can be up to 40, 50 days. So it just depends on the temperature.
Yeah, because I was pulling stuff out here, 5 different stages from egg, larva, protonymphin, and deutonymphin. I don't know if I pronounced it right. Adult. Yeah, and then adult. 2 weeks is pretty short for them to finish the whole life cycle, so they can reproduce really fast.
Right.
Well, I guess one of the big issue for any of the pests, and if you wanted to manage them, you would know which stage that they are most devastating for plants were.
Well, I mean, the adult's going to be able to do the most damage because it's bigger. It takes out basically they penetrate the cells, remove the fluids, and that cell dies, and so you get little yellow marks and stippling, and as they feed on it more, the yellow spots get bigger, they coalesce, and so you can see the population growing just by looking at the yellow stippling. As you get larger mite, they do just feed on a lot more cells, and so the spots get bigger, and generally where there's one adult, there's going to be a whole lot more, and so they can cause damage very quickly.
But among all those 5 stages of the life cycle of spider mites, only the adults cause damage to the plants?
Even the very young ones will do a little bit of feeding. So they all cause damage. It's just that I do more damage on eating the steak at my house than my kids do because I'm bigger.
Okay, so for the larva and the 2 nympho stage, it still cause damage to the plant, just not to the extent of the adult does, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And each of those stages, just before they molt into another stage, they have a resting stage, which doesn't feed. So their whole time as a larva or a pseudonymph or pseudonymph is got half of it's in a resting stage, molting and developing to the next stage.
And how long does that stage last? A day or 2, or?
It depends on which ones, and again, it depends on the temperature.
And so does all those stages of the spider mites live on the plant leaves, or does any of them are in the soil?
None in the soil. Okay, most of the mites are found on the plant. They prefer to be on the underside of the leaf, but that doesn't mean that as the populations grow, pressure, they may move onto the top of the leaf. And as a population gets really high and the plant's starting to suffer, they will develop webbing, and basically as a mechanism to disperse from that plant that they perceive as probably going downhill. So they can be carried by the wind on these strands of silk. These strands of silk can get on people's clothing. So then if you brush against them, you're going to transmit them to someplace else in the greenhouse, or a pet, another animal they can hitchhike. But it's mainly the silk is a way that they help transfer themselves from one plant to another.
Okay, yeah. Because I know that for spider mites, I guess that's the late stage of the spider mites when the population has already built up so quickly, and so you can start seeing the web. But that will be too late for people to take any actions to control the pest, right?
Yeah, it depends. If you really don't mind, you're going to have damage on that plant, it's not going to go away. So if it's gotten to that point, you might as well, if you want to sell a quality plant, you might as well dump it.
Yeah. So
but if it's your pet plant in the house, you're going to probably do what you can to save it. So it just depends on what your goals are.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned that the pest normally would stay the lower side of the leaves. So that's where if people are scouting for the plant, that's where people should be looking for, right?
Yep. They should be turning leaves over and looking at the bottom of the leaf.
And what exactly should they be looking for? What is the first sign of the spider mites? Some of the first or early symptoms that people would start getting their alarm on the pest?
I think they'll probably see the yellow stippling on the top of the leaf first, but it depends on how good you are at looking at things. You have, and this is a problem I have with a lot of trade shows, that these people pick up the small plastic hand lenses. They're not good enough, okay? Especially nowadays when we're dealing with broad mites and Thrips parvispinus, chili thrips. You need a good hand lens. It's worth the investment. It's going to cost you $40, $50, but it's something you can use and you can actually see something. And then you can see the adults. You will see often the eggs may be laying around. You'll see these little round, spherical, opalescent white eggs on the underside of the leaf. They look like they may be floating because they're on some of the webbing. And that's, again, another telltale sign. You may see dead bodies laying around, especially if you have a predator. The predatory mite will remove the fluids, and you'll see these little bodies laying around.
What are the host range for spider mites? I know that they can cause damage to a wide range of plants. What are the main ones that most susceptible to spider mites in the greenhouse setting?
It's like which ones aren't. Croton is one, Dieffenbachia is one, Gerber daisy. We get a spider mite, I think it's called Lewis mite, on poinsettia. So it depends on the host plant. We get spider mites are always on hibiscus in a greenhouse, and for maintaining colonies of things, we often use beans, lima beans. So they get on a lot of different vegetables. The solanaceous crops, you will get a different Tetranicus evansi, which is a little tiny mite that feeds on tomatoes and eggplant, and they're a reddish color. So if I have a plant, I can probably get a mite to go on it.
So basically, I guess they would have their favorite, but they generally fit on any ornamental plants in the greenhouse. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they're the top one challenging any of the greenhouse nationwide. For people who were able to, let's say they were able to spot the first sign of the spider mites and from their scouting process, what should they do next? They need to take actions. What are some of the effective management practices that they need to take on, especially if they're a good grower? They can spot on those early signs of spider mites. What should they do?
Okay, well, the first thing is our growers need to basically, I think they need to make sure they know what they're fighting, okay? Some of the guys that have been working a few years know exactly what spider mites are and don't really need to do much more than that. Then, if it's a really bad infestation, trying to cure a lost cause is just a waste of time and money and puts everything else at risk. So get the really nasty ones out of the greenhouse, destroy them, don't make sure they get someplace that it's not going to reinfest the greenhouse plants. Then you kind of try to scout to see how far it's spread, how wide of an area do you need to treat? Is it just a few plants, or do you have to treat everything in the greenhouse? Determine whether you're going to use a chemical and treat the whole nursery or spot treat, or whether you're going to go another route and get biological control. It just depends on the level that you're dealing with. If it's a few mites, you might be able to begin a biocontrol program. But once they're really well established, you need to drop the population back and start from the beginning.
So what are some of the chemical or effective chemicals that being used for spider mites treatment?
Well, that I could have somebody standing here, somebody next door, ask that question, and the answer is going to be different for both of them, because you can have localized populations where they're resistant to pesticides, and they can be even almost in the same greenhouse. So there's no magic bullet. I can recommend a few that I think work well, but you have to try. That's where your scouting comes in, is that you need to go to the spot where the mites were after treating and ascertain whether your chemical is actually doing what you think it's supposed to be doing. And so you have to have a good scouting program. You have to stick with it so that you make your application and you go back to those plants, and it depends on the chemical. For example, avid, people used to say it wasn't working. They go through and they spray and they come back the next day and there would be some live mites. Some of them don't die, or they don't shrivel up and turn brown. So with avid, they'd be sitting there. They'd look like they're healthy, but they're a little bit raised up on like on stilts, and you could touch them and they'd fall over like tipping cattle. They just fall over. They don't do anything. They look healthy. They didn't dry out. So it's like they were encased in plastic or something. Some will take 7 days to work. So you can't go out in 3 days, and if you don't see anything, just think that it didn't work. And that happens with a number of some of the newer ones. They're a little bit slower acting. So you have to be somewhat patient. You have to learn from experience. So keep notes if not for you, for the next guy that may be trying to control mites in your greenhouse. We get into some controversy in trying to tell people what to do next. In some cases, we have people that say you need to hit the mites with a different switch chemistry every time you apply it. Some say you need to apply it a couple times in a row before you change to the next chemistry. I personally believe that it's like a gun. You've only got 6 bullets. If you treat it with avid and then you switch, well, that avid is probably still on the plant active. You come back too quick within 3 to 5 days and it's still active. You just covered it over with some more of the same stuff. And you have to consider what the residual activity is and how long something may last. So I generally say to rotate the class of chemistry 4 or 5 days. If it's really bad, I'd try to hit it with the second application of something within about 5 days, and then 2 or 3 times, and use at least 3 or 4 different modes of action. I don't recommend having more than 4 modes of action, because then what happens is we've had some of our best growers put like 5, 6 in a rotation, and one of those 6 is not going to be very active. Okay, the chances are that the bug is resistant to it or tolerant, and so you don't break the life cycle. So if you have a dud in there, then you're not going to rotate and treat and be with the most effective materials. So but you have to pay attention after each application. Does that make sense?
Yes, you mentioned with the life, it would have to go back to the life cycle again. When we apply for whatever treatment that we're trying to, we probably also need to think about the life cycle of the pest itself. When would be the spider mites be the most vulnerable? And that will need to the application of the chemistry most effective, right?
Well, I think that the egg is probably the least susceptible. Then the larval stage being small, it's really not feeding that much. Even water and soap is going to knock it off. But as far as chemistry goes, I think the nymphal stages are probably very susceptible, the adult being the least susceptible.
So we would be, if we're applying for the chemistry or the product, the insecticides, that would be the lymphant stage would be the one that we're going to target for, right?
Yeah, I would say that. But your chemistry is going to last almost as long as the whole life cycle. So all those stages are going to be exposed.
Okay.
I'm not that worried. Some people will use an ovicide, but again, those eggs are going to hatch almost before the residual of that chemistry is no longer effective. Okay, now, if you're using something like the citric acid or things that have absolutely no residual activity, then you probably want to get the younger ones.
What about because I know neem oil the neem oil products also are often used to control the pest in general. If we were putting the neem oil, when would be the best time?
I'm afraid to answer that truthfully because I've never been that excited about the neem oil.
All right.
Especially on mites. So, I mean, I'm biased.
Because it's not that effective in terms of control?
Again.
Okay. But what about the biocontrol? Because you have worked a lot on the biocontrol perspective. Are there any good, I know there are good biocontrol agents that are effective for spider mites. Can you tell us a little bit more of the biocontrol for the spider mites?
I obviously am a big fan of biocontrol. I've been working on biocontrol of spider mites from the day I started here in Florida. My predecessor Dr. Hamlet had worked on spider mites using persimilis, and then one called macropolis, which is similar to persimilis, but it's indigenous to Florida. We have a whole array of natural enemies that are effective. They all have a place that can be carved out for their use. I personally prefer using californicus. You really want to start a population and start releasing natural enemies even before you find the spider mites. You want them in the system. Let them be your scouts. Let them run around and look for spider mites. If you find a spider mite infestation that's pretty heavy, then you probably want to use a combination, use persimilis and californicus, because persimilis is able to knock the population down quicker than a spider mite, californicus. They are more voracious, but they only feed on spider mites. So if you have a plant like ivy or a croton that gets broad mites, you're going to lose your crop to the broad mites because nothing there is to, you're not spraying, and you've got a predator persimilis that won't eat them. Okay, so californicus is critical. Californicus will run around and it can survive on 1 egg a day. Okay, so then you have this population of californicus that will almost establish in the crop, feeding on other things other than spider mites. Persimilis is a very host-specific predatory mite. It feeds on not all spider mites even. It prefers two-spotted, maybe a little bit more, might feed on Glover mite. It's very sensitive to the host that it has to feed on, whereas californicus isn't. Then you have an array of other players, okay? We're using banker plants now, and we're using both the predatory mites and the gallella hoogie or something like that, Feltiella. It's a little fly. And we found that this fly can, if we put a plant in today, put a few mites on it, and then have the banker plant system in all the way across the greenhouse, by the end of the weekend, on 3 days later, we can find the midges on that plant across the greenhouse. So they're very adept at moving around and finding spider mites. If I take a plant with spider mites on it and put it outside, within 2 weeks, I'm going to have a population in Florida, at least, or Popka, I'm going to have a population of that midge. So they're very effective searchers. They can be used with all the other predatory mites. So the combination is you have something going around the whole greenhouse looking for mites, and then you have those predatory mites that are pretty much staying in and around where they are. They don't travel nearly as much, and they can't fly.
So I'm not an entomologist, so this might be a dumb question, but I know some of those predatory mites, like you said, they can be host specific, and some will be eating other pests. So when you are planning or develop the biocontrol program, how are you going to decide which biocontrol agent they're going to be using, even if it's just a single agent or use a combination? How would you help people to decide that?
Okay, the first thing is you look at your crop. What kind of other pests is it going to get? Okay, now I recommend that if you've got something that gets an array of pests and it does get broad mite, that you look at, I just say there's Swirsky. If you're going to use persimilis, you're going to have to put something in with persimilis to eat the broad mite. So you could use Swirsky, or you could throw in californicus, or you could throw in lemonicus, all of which will feed on broad mites. If it isn't too bad of an infestation, or it's really early, or from past history that you get spider mites, then I would put in californicus as the one that I put out first. But it depends. Like I said, we try to get it started before we ever find a spider mite and let the predatory mites find them for us. But
okay.
If that crop has been exposed at all to pesticides, like a bifenthrin or anything like that, persimilis probably wouldn't be the choice. Californicus has some already built in, some of the ones that are the chemicals that are, start again. Some of the mite populations or californicus populations that are sold have some ability to detoxify or live on plants that have been treated. We have a strain that's been selected that's extremely resistant to bifenthrin or Talstar, so we don't have to worry about the pyrethroids. So but persimilis, you open a bottle across the room and they almost die.
Yeah, so I don't know how many growers out there only solely use biocontrol, because normally it's going to be a combination of biocontrol, cultural control, or cultural practice, and chemical control. Would you, in your opinion, what is the ratio spider mites would be the most effective? For instance, 80% of biocontrol or 20% of chemical control? Because they're, like you said, they have the biocontrol has compatibility with the chemical here and there.
There's certain chemicals that we can use in conjunction with biocontrol. I recommend, until you've got a trained customer to know what biocontrol is, that you look toward the very end of the crop to use the pesticides to clean up and make sure that there's nothing running around on there to cause your customer, until they become more sophisticated and understanding what's going on and realize that it's positive to have natural enemies running around. I think that the companies that are selling natural enemies today have a workforce that are out in the field helping growers get these things established. I don't want to take anything away from them because they do a good job. And so you have to work with those people because they know the population or the selection of particular predators that they have and what it can tolerate and what it can't. Okay. So they know that their predators have been surviving in crops that have been treated with this and this, but not this and this. So there, you always go to the source and ask them, okay, what they would recommend. Initially, you're going to need a extension agent or one of the chemical reps or one of those university people or other growers to help you get it started. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's another reason why we like banker plants, because some people go into a biocontrol program thinking that's the cure-all, end-all. Years and years ago in Disney, we were using predatory persimilis on roses, and it worked so well, they wanted to do biocontrol on everything throughout the whole Walt Disney World. That wasn't going to happen because there's too many other pests in Florida that they'd never let me, even if I was paying, back into the park.
So I guess it really depends. The reason why I'm asking this is because I have heard more and more people, growers, who are interested in adapting the biocontrol in their property, in their operation, because one, chemicals can be really expensive if you calculate the mass, like how many applications that they have to do. And with biocontrol, I think what the lack of training right now or even resources are the big hurdle for a lot of growers who wants to get involved in there.
They're increasing, okay? I'm saying, like, there's a new consultant in Florida every week, okay? I get all these new people coming in. So there's a lot of people that are learning how. There's lots of videos on. I have one on, I think, a hemp website about using biocontrol. But there are people where you can get help. But you don't want to start in a large greenhouse trying biocontrol. Take a couple plants. Take a bean plant, put it out in the nursery where you have some spider mite problems. Take that bean plant and put it back, maybe even in the office or in a protected area. Get some predators, put it on, and see what happens. Start small. Teach yourself what's going to happen so you're not totally unaware, of what these things can do.
Yeah, and there's no cure at all type of thing because it's very complicated with the pest itself and the crop itself. So you always want to learn, like take baby steps, like you said, start small. But
I know that we had a problem in one nursery, and we used one that's particularly soft as sultan. Could be used with the predators, and it was very effective. So, and we still had predators alive. So there are those tools, and like I said, californicus is much more tolerant than persimilis.
But another perspective of pest control or spider mites control would be coming back to the cultural control, where it's more like a prevention step. What are the cultural practices that grower can adapt to prevent the pest?
Well, first of all, when you buy in plant material, you have to realize that you might have a pest of some sort. So, one, you have a quarantine facility, okay? You have some place to watch those pests, and so they may not have yellow stippling today, but they could have it tomorrow. So you don't put it in and spread it throughout your whole nursery. Two, you don't even have to it could have some roots on them, but the small plants, we do dip. Okay. We've heard a lot of talk about some people doing research on dipping. We did that years and years and years ago and found that we didn't have an increase in disease. We had very good control of mealybugs and spider mites and aphids. Our local growers here they go to a large grocery store we have here, Publix, and buy Publix brand dishwashing or dish soap and make a 1% solution. And they all tried it and had good success. That was another step to try to start with clean plant material. You try to maximize mites really like or do well along in the plants that are close to a road, because as they're driving up and down a dirt road, you get dust on them, and that gets in the webbing and actually helps protect them. And so you end up having mite outbreaks in those kind of dusty areas. So you need to pay attention to that. Sometimes water will help. People have used high-pressure water, and not too high, and can wash them and dislodge them. Try to minimize pet plants. A lot of times in the greenhouse, you'll get somebody that just loves tomatoes or something, and they'll bring in a plant, and that never gets treated. And a lot of times it'll sit there, and the pest populations will build up on it. Your sprayer guy may not go in on the aisle and treat the weeds. He's not going to, and so you have to make sure that you either pull them or treat them, because you can get pest populations developed there. My wife was a professional scout for 30 years at Engelman's, and she would walk in and she would just eyeball the nursery, and you could tell places where you're going to have some issues, whether the screening is torn, whether there's pet plants, and those types of things. So you just have to pay attention to all the things that could impact your pest population.
So if, for instance, because I know for some other pests, if they have the early infestation early on, you can do like a pruning or anything like that to reduce that. That's especially for woody ornamentals. But if, for instance, for hibiscus, would pruning work for the spider mites at all?
Well, they prefer the new growth. And so if you're cutting out all the new growth, that's going to knock the population down. If you make the canopy more open, it's coverage. If you don't get the chemical to the mites, you're not going to kill them. We have a lot of materials that are translaminar, and their activity, which goes through the leaf and gets the populations on the bottom. We have some like Contos that is a systemic, but really you don't want to count on that. You have to make sure that you get good coverage, high volume spray.
Yeah. And you mentioned that they are going to be staying on the bottom of the leaf. That would be if ideally they can separate the chemical from the bottom of the plant, right? Or the leaf.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we have some people that are very, very good. They end up building their own nozzles, and they have some that are spraying up and some are spraying down, so they get good coverage.
Yeah, because that would be if you can treat, because a lot of time if it's just a regular nozzle application and just from like the air spraying, then that would be only cover the canopy that's upside in there, and that wouldn't.
You want to make sure that the pressure isn't too high, but you got to have the pressure high enough to ruffle the leaves and get them to twist and turn so that you do get some of that. And we used to have, I haven't seen anybody using it in a while, but the indicator cards that you could stick underneath the leaf that would be sensitive to the sprays, and it would turn blue, and you'd be able to tell. And growers learn real quick that, they thought they were doing a great job, but they weren't.
So you kind of mentioned the indicating card, and that made me think about the sticky pad or sticky card, which is pretty common to monitor the population of the pest. But are there any, like, for people who is going to monitor the population of the sticky or of the spider mites, do you suggest them to put the sticky card in there? Well, do they have preference in terms of which color of the sticky card that they prefer?
They're not going to do you any good, sticky cards. You'll catch more scouts than you will spider mites on them. I wouldn't waste my time. Now, some people will use indicator plants. Like I said, putting a bean out in a crop. Something like a bean is just really, really sensitive. It shows damage quicker. Mites love beans. We go to Publix and buy a bag of beans, and it works great.
Bean would be a better indicator than sticky pad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know you have been in Florida, or University of Florida, for over 40 years. What now if you get a young grower or a new grower and ask you to say how to set themselves up for long-term success, what advice would you give to them and why?
I'd say they need to be a pain in the ass.
Can you
People
explain?
are here. We're here to help. We get paid to help. We have a clinic that's open every Tuesday. We don't have enough of them coming in. And we see younger and younger kids bringing the plants in, which is very encouraging, which shows that they're excited, they're interested in new knowledge. And I think that's number one, is that to be excited, seek out the people that can help you, get a relationship with them, have them understand what you're trying to achieve, and that you're excited, you're interested in helping them and cooperating with them. And I think that'll go a long way. We have trained individuals sitting down at our clinic, and sometimes nobody ever shows up.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
But you don't need anybody to wake you up. You just wake up every morning and then come to work. What about the junior faculty and researchers? What suggestions would you give to set themselves for a successful career like you did?
Well, I think number one is you just have to be inquisitive and curious and open your eyes. Take time to look at what's going on around you and look at the plants and just enjoy yourself. It's getting harder. I tell you, all the stuff we have to do nowadays, 50% of our job is just stuff to drive us nuts.
Paperwork.
Yeah.
And I guess for junior faculty, well, I am a junior faculty myself, and I think one of the pressure or stress is getting tenure or getting your package built up. I guess for me, I am looking for people who I can work together. For entomology, it might be a little bit better, but in general, for ornamental, the grant opportunity are very limited. And that's one of the challenges for a lot of junior faculty is trying to build a successful career in ornamental in general.
Yeah, that brings me back to something I forgot earlier. With the young people and with young faculty, is that you have to become part of the industry. What helped me is I used to go to a donut store every morning, and I ran into a grower there. The Delphastus is sold all over the world now. It came from his backyard. The fungus that we patented, the PFR 97 Ancora, that came from some plants in his greenhouse. So the industry, and really support the grower organizations, okay, like HRI, FNGLA, become part. And if you want to have a long career, then these people are going to be the people you see from now on for the next 40 years. So you might as well make friends with them and let them know what kind of person you are. Okay, I went to a nursery where the guy, he knew the answers to all the questions, but he wanted to see if I knew them. And you don't BS people in this industry, because if they're still in business, they're probably smarter than I am.
No, I totally get it. Especially for me, I think right now, a lot of people out there are more knowledgeable than I am. A lot of times it makes me nervous to answer a question because I'm like, I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Well, I agree. You just find mentors, people that you can, and if people can trust you, they're going to look to you to support them, to work with them. We can't do this ourselves. It's just too much going on. I'm setting up field trials right now. I'm trying to find people that want to try some banker plant stuff. And some they just want to sit in their own little world.
Yeah.
There's not, money's not the answer. You can't throw money at stuff, but it does come easier when people want to see that they can cooperate with you.
But I know you're a person who get excited with everything, even after you've been working for 40 years. But what is your next excitement for your work, for research, or for your life in general?
Well, this is going to sound weird, but I'm getting excited about mealybug biocontrol. There's a reason why if I go out, I can't find mealybugs. I'd be up to my eyeballs in mealybugs if there wasn't biocontrol out there somewhere. Something's eating them all. Okay? So we're taking plants out, sticking them in the bushes, coming back in a week or so, and if somebody hasn't stole it, we end up with a plant that generally has mealybugs and natural enemies on it. So we're trying to colonize them. We've got a little tiny fly that's going nuts on mealybugs that we didn't even know was there. And I've got a little tiny ladybug that eats mealybugs. I'm having a hard time growing mealybugs.
Because there are nature enemies
Yes.
Somewhere in the greenhouse?
Yeah.
And you didn't even know what it is?
I didn't know. Well, I can't get identifications on some of them. The little fly I dropped off at Gainesville a week or so ago to see if somebody could identify it. We have a parasitoid for Madeira mealybug that we sent out, and we still haven't gotten an answer on. I mean, some of these things are new. And it just took throwing a plant in the bushes and then bring it back into the lab.
Wow, that's interesting. Because, I mean, you would think that the whole thing with minibug it sounds interesting to me, because you would think that they're going to stick in there and all of a sudden they're gone because of other existing pests were passed in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, are you still in the phase of solve the puzzle of the minibug and what causes the issue? Or what are the enemies of the minibugs?
Well, the enemies we're finding are in a number of different categories. We have predators, we have the fly, and a caterpillar, which is eating them. But unfortunately, they're feeding a little bit on the plants, so we're ruling that one out. We've got ladybugs, some predatory mites, but I think the ones that are showing the most interest are a parasitoid, the ladybug, and little fly. We have colonies of all three of them.
Wow.
And so we're off to the races.
Yeah, more interesting work gonna be out for minibugs, and hopefully we'll get another episode on minibugs down the road.
My hope is to find a commercial company that's willing to rear them. Okay. We do have a banker plant system for the mealybugs, but growers don't want to do that. They want to be able to purchase something and release them.
Yeah. So with that in mind, if people want to find more of the information with all the work that you have done, where do you recommend them to go and find more information? Okay, so we'll just email you and then call you and to find more information.
Yeah, and I can send them some PowerPoints and PDF files of talks I've given, but I need to know the specifics and I can work with them from there.
Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, Lance, for joining me today.
My pleasure.
I have learned a lot with this, but thank you for still be so excited to provide your knowledge to our industry. I think it's really something we need it for, and that's why I was like, you are kind of one of the icons in the industry, because you are providing all those service, your knowledge, your skill to the industry so that we as a whole can survive together. So thank you.
And thank you.
Besides the resources and information that our guest speaker shared with us today, AFE also has additional resources for mites and other insect pests that can be found on AFE's website at endowment.org. I'll put those in the show notes as well. This episode in our first season is made possible through an educational grant from the American Floral Endowment, whose research priority helped shape the topics that are featured. To learn more about AFE and access their research and educational resources, visit their website at endowment.org. Conversation like this only happens when you support the show. For more information and find ways to support us, please go to bnbpod.com, bnbpod.com. If you like what you are hearing, spread the word and share this podcast with the people you love. Make sure you hit that subscription button and give a review for the podcast. And as always, go check out the show notes to learn more about this topic and other topics we featured on the show at bnbpod.com. Thank you for listening. Till the next time, stay healthy and go plants.